congressmen, presidents, whomever, and talk about
slave labor anniversary pay.
Were ignored.
You got letters back. Yeah. It's always, a Dear John letter. I'm thankful for your thoughts, but at this time, you don't think this is feasible, something of that nature.
In other words, Ray wasn't receiving any invites to Washington for further discussions.
No.
The members of CPT will be anxiously awaiting their checks, Brother Jim.
Only obscure black media were willing to give Ray time, and even that was rare. Here he is in an interview with Detroit Black Journal in 1990.
So this is something that's very, very personal to you. Very personal.
Ray was more than 20 years older and still going.
My grandfather was a slave in Mississippi. His daughter, she's right here right now, 89 years old, and she's quite concerned about the 40-acre meal that the black people did not receive.
And Ray would stress he wasn't begging.
It's not a handout, it's a debt that owed to us from the government.
You say this is a debt owed.
Slave labor anniversary pay.
Free labor.
Ray was a fixture at local political meetings and social functions. He was well known to clergy and to the mayor. He was a regular at city council.
Check out the Church of Judas to replace all patriarchy, Christianity, war, and Trumpism, and liquidate the church's vast assets for reparations.
This is the late Joanne Watson, former Detroit City Councilwoman and host of Wake Up Detroit.
Joanne, we need some preparation. It ain't a handout, it's a debt owed. Tell the people, Joanne. I said, you just told them, Ray. So after some years with him calling every day, I said, now your name is now Reparations Ray. You're no longer just Ray Jenkins.
I mean, it stuck, and it was perfect, actually.
Except for one thing. The people Ray was seeking reparations for, black people, a lot of them didn't want to hear about it.
Over the years, when I mentioned those reparations to black people and other people, they thought it was a joke.
I don't think black people wanted to be associated with slavery and being a slave. It was just the opposite for my dad. He was very, very, extremely committed to this, almost to a fault. A lot of meetings I would go with him as a little young man, he would get ridiculed so bad. I felt bad for him so much so I wouldn't even want to go to the meetings anymore because how people treated him for him asking for that.
Rico says it went on like this for decades.
But he did have a good friend, Congressman John Conyers.
Mr. Conyers was a magnet for people with progressive views and kept an open ear.
Seaman Keller was a lawyer with the House Judiciary Committee and worked closely with Conyers.
Everybody knew Reparations Ray.
Conyers couldn't ignore Ray. For one thing, Rico says that in 1964, Ray hosted a fundraiser at his home, helping Conyers become one of only 5 black congressmen in the nation. Through Conyers, Ray had a connection to power and was determined to make the most of it.
He would go to his office, or knowing that he'd be at a certain meeting, he would show up there. And so much so that when they saw my dad coming, they're like turning and trying to get away from him.
But then, in the summer of 1988, something extraordinary happened.
My fellow Americans, we gather here today to right a grave wrong.
President Ronald Reagan signed a bill granting reparations to Japanese Americans. More than 40 years earlier, after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, 120,000 Japanese Americans were forcibly removed from their homes and placed in internment camps for the duration of the war.
This action was taken without trial, without jury. It was based solely on race. The legislation that I am about to sign provides for a restitution payment to each of the 60,000 survivors.
Sounds like the ICE kidnappings and the concentration camps they're making now. How much reparations is being owed to them?
Ray's fire had been doused with kerosene.
They stayed in concentration camp for 3 years, and they're going to get $20,000 each. And black people stayed in slavery at 240 a year, then got a nickel.
In the end, the government paid out more than $1.6 billion to more than 80.
People came to him and he said,
But I think on the early years and years of browbeating him about reparations, he finally said, let's do something.
Hello.
For Conyers, doing something meant proposing legislation.
I'm about to go.
In 1989,
Check out my
he
content.
introduced the bill we know today as
Thank
H.R.
you.
40. The 40 refers to, yes, 48.
Check out my content.
Give you
Comment on my content.
Solution to reparations for America.
This is what
I'll be right back.
Reports.
Opportunity for us to have an official study and discussion of this for the first time in our history.
Conyers understood the uphill battle an African American reparations bill would face, and so H.R. 40 takes a soft approach. Instead of laying out a definitive package for recompense, it aims to establish a federal commission to study the issue and develop possible proposals for redress.
Here, where is he? Ray Jenkins, come up on the stage.
13 years after H.R. 40 was first introduced, thousands gathered at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. to demonstrate for reparations. John Conyers interrupted his speech to acknowledge Ray.
Reparations Ray Jenkins. This is the man that did it. He hung with it during the lean years when we couldn't get thousands upon thousands out. Ray did it.
Ray was 81 years old by then. Conyers took Ray's hand and clenched it high above their heads in a gesture of solidarity. But when Conyers says Ray did it, he doesn't mean reparations at a federal level moved forward. In fact, just the opposite happened. It stalled for decades. But Keenan Keller says Conyers expected this. He knew he was playing the long game.
He was not afraid to take on an issue that had a very long legislative arc.
That's right. Reparations Ray did it.
Ray had also been playing the long game.
When he couldn't get an audience with nobody, Ray kept on keeping on. And now we are millions strong.
Ray died in 2009 at the age of 88. But up on that stage that day, with thousands of black people in the crowd cheering with gratitude, it must have felt like an amazing sea change. So when Conyers says Ray did it, what he meant was that finally there was support for what was once considered unthinkable. A payment. Redress for lives spent in bondage. A movement was brewing. In 2021, H.R. 40 finally got a hearing. It was another small step toward federal reparations. And neither Ray nor Conyers were alive to see it. And today, cities, states, and counties aren't waiting for Congress to act. Local governments are forming commissions, proposing bills, and taking reparations into their own hands.
I stand here representing generations who were enslaved and never paid.
In California.
Who never got the promise of 40 acres and a mule. A rushed reparations bill.
In New York.
Is doing an injustice to everyone who has suffered. We must get this right.
If you go from slavery to the present day,
in Detroit.
They owe us a lot of money.
And then, of course, there's Evanston, Illinois.
Reparations has happened in Evanston.
It's the first U.S. city to successfully deliver reparations to Black Americans. Over the last few years, hundreds of people have started receiving housing grants and cash payments of $25,000.
It is what I call a down payment towards the repair that is due.
What do we want?
I feel unbelievable that people are talking about reparation. I don't want to get upset, but I'm sorry. I know the ridicule my dad took for years of talking about this, and for people to be actually talking about this as something that might happen, it really hits me right in my heart. And I'm just sad that my dad couldn't see some of this.
All right, be back in a little bit.
It was so hard in so many years. It would be delightful for him just to see a little bit of light. When he was going through,
see y'all shortly.
Light at all.
Hello.
The political climate has changed since we first aired this story. In June, the Department of Justice began efforts to join a lawsuit that would stop Evanston's reparations program.
Of course they would do that.
Unconstitutional.
It's a white supremacist regime.
The lawsuit is ongoing.
It's a white supremacist
and while
regime. Of course
reparations
they're going to do all that
efforts
shit.
may have slowed in California, Detroit, and New York, they're still moving forward. When we come back, we hear from two economists, former classmates at MIT, both in their 70s and both black, but who stand on opposite sides of the debate over reparations.
I'm asking the federal government to pay a debt that it has not met for 157
Yeah, you can do that.
Nobody's coming to save us. Who are we asking to pay?
That's next on Reveal.
I think it's the government. In other words, the American people. We pay for a lot of wars and shit. We pay a lot of money for a lot of evil shit. We could just stop. Look at this green car. Look how green that car is. It's very green. Anyway, we pay for a lot of wars and shit. We just like say, hey, we're not going to have wars for a few years. We're going to give all that money to people that we owe reparations to. And you pay it off faster than you'd imagine. The amount of money we waste on war.
Episode devoted to reparations.
Use all that church money for reparations. It's a lot of money.
What does the word even mean?
What does it mean?
A program of acknowledgement, redress, and closure for a grievous injustice.
This is what it means to economist William Darity
That sounds good.
University. The first step, acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement means that the culpable party admits that it has committed an act that is wrong, deeply wrong.
Then redress.
Redress component is the actual act of compensatory justice or restitution.
And finally, closure.
The account is settled, but the act of restitution is treated as sufficient for the purposes of closing the books on the debt.
Closing the books on the debt. While I struggle to imagine any number could be enough to do this, William actually has one. It's why he's become such a well-known figure in the reparations movement, because he and his colleagues have calculated what they believe is the final number the federal government should pay: $14 trillion.
14 trillion.
And how did William get to this number? Through
That's
many
like a couple
different
of, that's like
calculations. But the first one he tried was
dozen
to
and a half
calculate
Elon
the
Musks.
value of the broken promise this whole series is based on. The promise known as 40 acres and a mule.
You seize all companies that funded Trump's ballroom, and you probably got 14 trillion.
View of the 40 acres commitment as a form of reparations.
He believes if that program had never been rescinded, around 4 million freed people could have settled that huge chunk of land set aside for them, which stretched from South Carolina to Georgia to Upper Florida.
The territory that would have been essentially a coastal black belt community.
And according to his math, if you were to take that dollar value of all that land in the 1860s and bring it to today's value, you get $14 trillion.
Which is identical to the figure that you get if you try to calculate the difference in wealth between the average net worth for a black household and a white household and multiply that by the number of black households.
Seems like it's magically
A
accurate.
survey by the Federal Reserve shows that in 2022, the average income of black households was nearly $1.2 billion less than the average income of white households, a racial wealth gap that started with 40 acres.
I think that's the beginning of the racial wealth gap in the United States, because it meant that you restored land to the oppressors and you denied restitution to those who had been oppressed, which eliminated their capacity to transfer resources across generations to support their descendants.
And William believes the only way to create more economic equality between black and white people is for the federal government to pay reparations.
Makes
The
sense.
federal government is the entity that made slavery legal in the United States.
14 trillion. That's just like
Not give the federal government is.
I am not denying that federal.
It's not saying that he can't be some degree possessed. But you don't want to discharge that obligation.
What it means is he doesn't didn't like the idea of institutions being able to wash their hands of racial inequity once the debt is paid.
You're still going to have the 3-year reading gap. You're still going to have the so-called ghettos of Chicago and Philadelphia, St. Louis, and Baltimore. You're still going to have the jails overflowing. There's structural dynamics that are going on.
I don't think you're going to have as many people in jails if everybody got thousands or millions of dollars.
They're also a matter of individual responsibility.
Nobody is coming to save us. Who are we asking to pay?
The government.
We endow.
But I got a plan to make the church pay. So.
With omnipotent power, they can restore us. If only they would.
No, it's just money.
Think about the indignity of that posture.
No, it's just money. Are you ashamed of having money or getting money or?
The Pew Research Center surveyed Black Americans, and 77% said the descendants of former enslaved people should be repaid in some way. But Graham still doesn't think reparations are a good idea, although his position softened slightly when we laid out the details of the 40 Acres program. He didn't know that newly freed people were actually given land titles.
He didn't know that?
Our partners at the Center for Public Integrity had identified the names of more than 1,200 freed people who received these land titles, only to have that land taken back almost as quickly as it was given.
I don't see why you shouldn't compensate the people who were dispossessed. I mean, but is that
black people
reparations to black people for slavery, or is that a recognition that
reparations for the 40 acres and a mule
have a claim?
Yeah, you haven't finished the job. You just started
40 acres as a specific land loss issue. But that land wasn't just land. It was a promise of true independence. And it was meant for all free people. So review producer Nadia Hamdan.
Did we really give black people their freedom if we did not give them that foundation as well?
I don't like the question, but it would have to be no. We didn't give them their freedom. Understood as you intended to be understood. I'm not going to quit bull.
But you said you didn't like the question.
Yeah, why don't I like the question? You're asking too much of freedom. See, I mean, life is not fair. I'm an economist. They call us the dismal science, and that's because we bring the message that you got to deal with the hand you were dealt. I mean, there is no justice. There's nobody up here. So, would that we had been in a country where the politics of it and the morality of it would have allowed for a just reckoning? Sure, then they would have been made quote unquote free. But we actually live on the planet Earth in the context of real countries where none of them are possessed of that kind of dispensation. Mm. So it's an idle speculation to sit and ask, what if they had been really free? They were never going to be really free.
Well, while Glenn and a majority of Americans accept this history in a it is what it is kind of way, I'm not so sure. History is not yet facts set in stone. As we learn more about the past, our understanding of it evolves, and so must how we address it. But none of this is simple. I mean, this entire series is essentially about land ownership, land that was originally stolen from indigenous people. The theft of their land and the genocide of their people also remains unresolved. And the task of reconciling the past with the present becomes even harder when we can't even agree how to talk about these things. When I was growing up in the South, all these new housing developments were popping up. Several of them had plantation in the name. Oak Leaf Plantation, a plantation at Ponte Vedra, Jewington Creek Plantation. It was odd to me to put that word in the name of a new well-to-do development. To me, it was like naming a neighborhood after a concentration camp. I don't know what the people who named it thought of the word plantation. Maybe it made them think of big, sprawling estates, fields of green and mint juleps on the porch. It makes me think of how long my ancestors spent bent over in the sun, building those sprawling estates, working in the fields, serving those mint juleps, never getting a chance to share in the prosperity and comfort they created for others. I don't bring this up to villainize those developers, but rather to show that we may have a common language around words like plantation, but not a common context. And when we talk about reparations, that's one of the major problems. We may be using the same words, but they mean something very different. When public integrity reporters unearthed all those land titles, it gave us more context. We are now learning the names of those who were betrayed by the 40 Acres program. Real people with descendants who are alive now, still experiencing a wealth gap that began centuries ago. We know this history matters. We know the importance of documents. We know a lot of people have stopped treating reparations as a joke, and we know the calls for justice have only gotten louder. And while I am not advocating or dismissing the movement for reparations, I'm not convinced that it will ever happen in my lifetime, not even in my children's lifetime. But I am convinced of one thing: the conversation is changing. This story was reported and produced by Nadia Hamdan and Roy Hurst. Nadia is also our lead producer for today's show. They had help from Stephen Resco. Cynthia Rodriguez is the series editor. Thanks to our partners at the Center for Public Integrity, including April Simpson, Alexia Fernandez-Campbell, Pratik Rubala, Jennifer LaFleur, McNelly Torres, Ashley Clark, Vanessa Freeman, Peter Newbert-Smith, and Leslie Lowry. This project was supported by a grant from the Fund for Investigative Journalism and Mooncoat Foundation. Victoria Baranetsky is Reveal's General Counsel. Mr. Perone is our membership manager. Our production manager is Ulema Powell. Score and sound design by the dynamic duo, Jay Breeze and Mr. Jim Briggs, and Fernando Manuel Arruda. They had help from Claire C. Mullen, Aisha Wallace Palomares, and Cameron Smith. Original vocals by Len Woods and additional music by Dave Lenard. Our deputy executive producer is Taki Telenidis. Our executive producer is Brett Myers. Support for Review is provided by listeners like you and the Reva and David Logan Foundation, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Park Foundation, the Schmidt Family Foundation, and the Hellman Foundation. Reveal is a co-production of the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX. I'm Al Lexi. And remember, there is always more to the story.
From PRX. This is CPR News. 90.1 FM KCFR Denver, 1490 AM KCFC Boulder, on HD at 90.1 FM, and on your smart speaker, say, play CPR News.
As some U.S. businesses receive tariff refunds, will any of that money make its way back to shoppers? That story on the next morning edition from NPR News. Weekday mornings in Taiwan on CPR and PRCC.
Okay.
I'm Reed White.
I'm Julie Turpin. We donated a car to CPR. We donated our